Why don't you check your mic and then reach over and check his too?
Okay. Ready? Check, check, check. Is that good? I don't know. My phone's recording, so I don't know if he'll be texting or not. So, okay. Couple more minutes, Facebook, and we'll be on. The guest is on his way in. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers on Money 105.5 FM, part of the Wall Street Business Network. This is Mark Bellows, tax principal with Clifton Larson Allen, a national CPA firm, the 8th largest one in the country. And we've got an office here in the Sacramento region, and I'm in that office. I work with manufacturers and distributors, construction contractors, and real estate developers and investors, businesses, individuals, that type of stuff. This is the time of year when we're doing year-end planning, and so we've been busy working with our clients on that, trying to anticipate what the tax bills are going to show up like. When they finally get, or the tax bill, when it finally gets hammered out between the House and the Senate and then the President signs. So we'll see where that's going to go. I think my thought is, at least what I'm working with, is a couple things. One is that tax rates should definitely be lower for individuals next year, at least the ones on my client base, and so to the extent they can defer income, it's a good move. And chances are pretty good that state tax deductions and real estate property tax deductions, at least for individual personally owned properties, could very well be limited next year. So if someone's personally not in an alternative minimum tax situation, then prepaying their state tax could make sense. And otherwise, we don't know. A whole lot of unknowns with the tax bill. So more on Facebook Live. Got some people watching me. I've got a couple open chairs here. Nothing like yesterday's Trump picture with the 2 open chairs next to him, a little publicity stunt. That's not the case here. I actually got a guest coming on in a little bit. Patrick Harbison with Patrick Harbison Public Relations. He's on his way into the studio and will be joining me shortly, and so we'll be talking about him and his business and what all he does here in the Sacramento region. So looking forward to that. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Our excuse me, my middle daughter came home. She's a freshman at college and came home for the weekend, so it was great to have her home. Enjoyed it. We did some usual, turkey day, eating lots of good food, a little bit of house decorating and yard decorating. And then Saturday we went to the Midtown Farmers Market and grabbed brunch at Cafe Bernardo. So it was a nice way to spend the Saturday before it started raining. Let's see. One of the things I noticed as we drove around, we were recently at Top Golf in Roseville. Anybody's been at Top Golf? It's a pretty fun place to be. A lot of crowds, pretty packed place consistently. And if you notice, there's some construction going on next to it, and that's because they're building a hotel there and potentially a second one. So you're looking to have possibly 2 hotels there. You've got 3 across the freeway there in Rockland. You've got another one up the road a bit by the mall. So lots of hotels along the road there. Talked to some architects yesterday who said that there are plans in the works for as many as 3 or 4 hotels right up by the Sacramento International Airport. So my question is, for our listeners, is who uses these? Rockland, Roseville, who uses those hotels? Is it all business travelers? I know there's some sports teams that'll come in. When our daughter was on the dance team in high school, they went there for a couple nights in the fall. But who uses all these hotels, and why do we need 3 new ones in Rockland and the 4 by the airport? Who uses those hotels? It's really interesting. I'm curious. Sacramento, International doesn't have a lot of the overnight travel where people leave early in the morning for places all around. Certainly not like San Francisco or Oakland or something. So who uses those hotels? So if any of my listeners do, please call and let me know. I'm always curious to know if you've used one of these hotels for a night here and there. There's just so many going up. It's interesting. My hair is a little bit trimmed right now, but I'm going to grow it out because, as always, I do a fundraiser for St. Baldrick's. It's always around the first or second Saturday in March. I'll know the date more as we get closer, but I am going to grow the hair out and then shave it all off when it gets to March. So those of you that watch along on Facebook, you'll notice my hair get longer every week until we get there. And again, it's a fundraiser, and I will be sending out and have more information for all of the listeners that want to contribute. What St. Baldrick's does is they fund research into childhood cancer, looking for ways to find cures to childhood cancer. And what's great about the local St. Baldrick's, and they do a shaving at the Roseville Galleria. They do them at De Beers Bar. They do them at a couple De Beers locations. They do them at Rayleigh Field, at the Kings Game Room. There's lots of places in town where they do them in the spring, do these head shavings. And a lot of the money that's raised locally actually goes to local causes, specifically UC Davis. So There's a Noriki is one of the researchers there, medical researchers there at UC Davis, and it funds a lot of her research during the course of the year. So it's a great activity. Looking forward to having my hair grow out, and then always looking forward to having it shaved because it's nice not to have to deal with it. So that's coming up in, like I say, in about 3 months. But until then, we'll be getting there with some more growth of hair. So let's see what's going on on the Twitterverse. A whole lot of talk about tax bill, about Matt Lauer being fired. There's been a lot of people a lot of heightened awareness with the sexual harassment. So Matt Lauer being fired, Bill O'Reilly not too long before him. So there's lots of change in the various news organizations. Bitcoin is now over $11,000. I saw that, where you could have bought it for $1,000 at the beginning of the year. That's quite an increase. Do you trust it though? Anybody out there invest in Bitcoin? Yeah, you wonder, is it what's gonna happen? Who's getting the money and where's it going? I kind of wonder about that. So I've been following Bitcoin. It's very interesting to follow and to see, and I'm curious as to people who've invested and how secure they feel with their investment, and if anyone's been able to get out. I mean, if you've gotten out, you've lost money, lost potential growth. You haven't lost money, you've made money, but you've lost some potential growth. But I don't know. So Bitcoin's an interesting thing, and I hope that it's not a Ponzi scheme, Jerry, as a Jerry producer said. But it just somehow doesn't feel right. But I'm 52 years old. I'm not used to having everything be online like that, and so maybe younger people are all right with it all because everything's becoming virtual nowadays, right? Cyber Monday was a big success. Jeffrey Bezos, owners of Amazon, is now a $100 billion, the world's most recent $100 billion man, because Amazon's just doing incredible things over and over and over. So maybe virtual currencies just kind of the way it is nowadays, and people are going to be along on the train. I don't know. What's going on in the news? A couple things I saw. What was this one? The most Instagram places of 2017. Anybody have a guess as to what that is? I think number one is Disneyland. Number one, Disneyland, Anaheim, California, the most Instagram place in 2017. Number two, Times Square, New York. Of course, you always see lots of those pictures. Number three, Central Park in New York. Number four, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France, not the one in Las Vegas, or Paris, France. Number five, Tokyo Disney Resort in Tokyo, Japan. All right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, hopefully Patrick will be here by then. We can join our guest. Otherwise, we'll continue the conversation. We're listening to Beyond the Numbers.
With Katie, we only got 40 seconds. No Katie spot. Sorry.
So a little more time. Is he here yet? Check. And we're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on 105.5 FM, part of the Wall Street Business Network. That was Jerry's lead music was Hall & Oates. I can't go for that. No can do. That's an oldie. That's from back when I was a kid. Yeah, Jerry says I'm an oldie. He is. As am I. I saw that I had a question from someone. I don't know if it came through Facebook Live or texted. but it's a person who received an inheritance. And so the question is, what does that mean? And I'm not sure if it was cash or property, but I do want to point out what happens typically when someone receives an inheritance, because I get this question not infrequently. So a couple things to remember is, one, as the recipient of an inheritance, as the recipient of a gift, whichever, and the reason I bring tie those two together, because they're treated similarly under tax law. The recipients don't typically, as a result of the gift itself, don't have a tax liability for the recipient so the receipt of the gift. So if you receive an inheritance, you receive a gift, there's no gift or estate tax liability due to you. It's always due to the giver of the gift or the one whose estate it was. So that's the first question. Now, depending on what happens with the money, let's say that the person gives you a piece of property, and it's a rental property, and so now you're going to rent it out. Well, then you will have income tax on the rental income from the time you own it, yes. If you sell the property, you get a value at the date of gift. So let's say the date or inheritance. So let's say a piece of land is left to you in through someone's estate upon someone's passing. The piece of property at the time of passing is worth $250,000. You turn around and sell it for $280,000 sometime later. That $30,000 difference would be taxable to you, but you do get a gift or an inheritance worth whatever the value was at the date of the gift or inheritance, and so any appreciation from that date is taxable, but anything up to that date is not. And so if someone were to pass and leave you, for instance, their IRA, and you Jerry's saying, please, someone, I know, I don't have that in my family either, Jerry, but you never know. If someone were to pass and leave you an IRA, then the income stream from the IRA, the continued monthly distributions or annual distributions, would be taxable to you. So there is some income tax potential on what you do with what you receive through an inheritance or gift, but the actual act of receiving an inheritance or receiving the gift is non-taxable. So something to keep in mind. Hope that helps. If you have other questions, please let me know or call. I'd be more than happy to discuss that in more detail. Right before the break, and our guest is still en route, so I'm going to go through this a little more, but right before the break, we were talking about where was it at, the most Instagram spots in 2017. And again, for everyone's reminder, there he is. Everyone's reminder, Disneyland is #1, California Adventures is 5, Disney Europe, Disney World. It's all part of the top 10. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Patrick
Absolutely.
Harbison. Sorry to jump in there, but I'm glad you're able to make it.
Live radio.
Yeah, that's
how
right.
are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Very well.
Good, good. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. And
Sure.
We're on Facebook Live, by the way.
Oh, great.
So
Hi, everybody. So I own PHPR,
Okay.
which is a local public relations firm here in Sacramento. We are about 5 years old. We've got about 22 clients. And we're sort of all over the place with regards to the client work that we do. We do a lot of philanthropic work, nonprofit work, earned media coverage for statewide associations that may have a legislative bent on behalf of their membership. We do restaurants, we do events, we do actors and bands. So the scope of the work that we do is usually tied to earned media, television, radio, print placement on behalf of our clients. But our client base is pretty wide, so we're lucky that way.
How did you end up with musicians and actors?
That is an interesting story. When I was in-house, prior to owning my own firm, I worked for larger firms and also statewide associations for 10 years. They were all politically minded, and I sort of got a little tired of the repetition that politics can provide. And so what I did was I curated sort of press clippings that at the time, again, only spoke to political candidates, and subscribed to IMDb, got a pro subscription.
Okay.
Sent those press clippings to publicists that I thought worked with some, frankly, C to D list level actors, and asked them if they would teach me sort of the ropes about working with talent remotely, because obviously I didn't want to move or relocate to Los Angeles. Long story short, a couple bit, and 2 years later I had a number of clients that were actors on Days of Our Lives, the soap opera.
Right.
And from there it sort of snowballed.
And so what type of PR do you do for those?
So for them it works more as a publicist.
Okay,
One of the things about people that are on soap operas, I think in particular, is that they always want to be on a primetime show or certainly film, right? And so it's finding unique ways to brand them outside of necessarily their soap opera genre.
Okay.
And so that might be having them partner with a statewide charity, right? Or that might be booking them on red carpet events for larger shows, things
Right.
like The Voice finales. Any way that we can get them exposure. But what's interesting is that it's really just like politics. When I would work in house for associations that were sponsoring a candidate race or raising funds via a PAC, the way that you would market a politician is really similar to the way that you would market an actor, in that you sort of identify an audience.
Yeah, I think that's the U.S. political
Right.
scene. It's been
Well,
that way for a while.
certainly now.
I wonder if it's that way in other countries as much, or is it really it's much more of an American
It seems to be a lot more polarized here, which
certainly.
sadly for somebody like me in some ways makes my job a little bit easier because I
You
can
can exploit that.
I can really exploit it,
Yeah,
right? There's a lot of talk these days of bubbles that folks have created for themselves online. These sort of self-selected content and materials that we're creating for ourselves that somebody in my field can really push materials to. But I don't think that we see that as dramatically in other places. I mean, even our neighbors to the north, Canada, it seems to be a much more engaged conversation,
Right.
and I would say civil, at least
Yeah.
when it comes to the political side of things. But it is certainly an interesting question.
And is it because I assume it's not only national politics but also state and local
Yes,
politics.
yeah.
Now I wonder, is California any different than Colorado, Arizona, than other states? Just because California's got Hollywood and we've got
Right.
the big lights and the bright lights and that kind of stuff. So I wonder if we're any more at a state and local level than other states are.
California is so interesting, and it's almost, you almost can't compare it because it's so big,
Yeah.
and it's got this massive economy. And I think that even sometimes, California's obviously been a blue state politically for decades. But what's interesting is that we just worked on a major transportation bill that sought to raise funds via various taxes for new infrastructure, new road infrastructure, and things of that nature. And things like that play really well
Yeah.
in areas like San Francisco and Berkeley and
Right.
Oakland,
Right.
but not so well in
Yeah.
places like Orange County and San
Right,
Diego.
yeah.
And so even in California, while we're sort of considered to be, a blue state, you do see a lot of conversation and a lot of difference of opinion. So it's hard to answer. I think part of what we have to do as PR professionals, at least in my industry, is kind of identify our target markets and curate our messaging accordingly, right? I wouldn't pitch the same letter to the editor for the Orange County Register as I would even for the Sacramento Bee.
Right. Yeah. Very different, huh? Very
Yeah,
different.
and so it's issue specific, but also certainly area specific.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So you started. You went to college, so.
I did. Stickers up. I'm a Sac State graduate.
Did you grow up in the Sac area?
I did. I grew up in Pocket, Greenhaven
Okay.
area,
Uh-huh.
and went to Christian Brothers High School,
Okay.
and then Sac City for 2 years, and then right on into Sac State.
Nice. And then out of Sac, did you get a PR degree, or what was your degree?
I did. So I got a bachelor's, and my major was actually in journalism, and then I had a minor in public relations. And what I thought at the time was that I would, jump into the print media world and become this great investigative journalist. And
And what year was this?
this was 2002. So this was 2002.
So print media wasn't dying yet.
Not yet. I mean, that was,
Yeah.
that
I was
was
going to say, it probably changed a lot as you got through college and early.
I mean, at that time, our professors weren't warning us, right?
Yeah.
Certainly there were some signs, and you could see it. My first couple jobs were here actually in Sacramento, at local independent weeklies like the News Review and things of that sort. And you could tell at the time the pressure for ad space sales was sort of through the roof, and it was, even then it was a telltale sign that the industry in particular, as it is affecting print media, was definitely changing. This again, though, you have to remember, was before the huge shift to online.
Right.
I mean, things like MySpace and Facebook were certainly around and gaining traction, but you didn't see just this onslaught of news and resources being available online as you do now.
Right.
But that transition again was happening, so it was interesting. It was an interesting time to kind of begin a career in print media.
Yeah, I imagine so.
And it just didn't last long for me. There were a lot of buyouts, the various publications that I worked for, lots of changes in upper management. The editors-in-chief were constantly circulating in and out.
Yeah.
Just a kind of tumultuous environment to be in. And so I just kind of made the conscious decision at that point to really focus on the public relations aspect of my educational background and jump in-house for an association, which is what I did, and sort of didn't look back, I guess.
So you went in-house to an association?
Yes.
And then how long did you stay with that association?
So that was the California Medical Association
CMA,
at CMA, and I was there for about 3.5 years.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful experience because it was really the first kind of on-the-ground training I had with regards to political and campaign messaging. The CMA at the time, and still currently, has one of the most influential PACs in the state. They are really instrumental in getting candidates elected at the local and even statewide level. And so it was a wonderful place to learn.
And what years were you there?
Oh gosh, so that would have been 2003 through 6.
Okay.
2003 through 6.
Definitely pre-Obamacare, but still,
Pre-Obamacare.
still talk in both camps about healthcare and need to do something about
Absolutely, and California, again, in particular, being such a unique state with such a huge population. At times, a lot of the issues were cyclical, year in and year out, and they were, Medi-Cal reimbursement rates for physicians, and there were a lot of rules on the books at the time about how California's public hospitals had to treat patients when they came in, even if they were underinsured or uninsured,
Right.
and how that was a strain on the overall system and what physicians felt about that. But two, there were a number of issues, and again, those issues were dependent on the region, right? The physicians groups in San Francisco might have had a lot of really particular, really specific issues that weren't necessarily facing physicians in San Diego County, but nonetheless had some similarities.
Right, yeah. So you went to you were a CMA for 3 years, and then
Yep.
where did you go?
Then it was an interesting journey. So I went to the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, which
Okay.
their membership base is specific to community college faculty throughout the state. And what I thought was really interesting about that was that it's my first role as a communications director,
Okay.
and it was a completely different, there were completely different issues that their membership faces than you can imagine
Yeah, sure.
the doctors
Yeah.
would have, right? And what's really, I thought, unique about that situation was that not only are their issues different than any other previous employer, but they're also different than their private sector faculty colleagues, and they're different than administration colleagues, right? So, each campus has the administration and the faculty, and the administration has their own, lobbying groups and associations, and so.
Sorry.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but we got to take a break.
Sure.
It's commercial time.
Let's
We're
do
going to take
it.
a break. We're talking with Patrick Harbison of Patrick Harbison Public Relations, catching up a little bit on his background, and then we're going to get some other things. So when we get back from the break, you listen to Beyond the Numbers.
We did.
I know. There's some water for you guys.
Oh my gosh, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
So sorry about that. It was so, I don't know if you heard about Matt Lauer.
Oh, yeah, I know.
God. And it all happened this morning.
I was going to ask, if you want to talk about that on air, just
Yeah, we can.
Just, this isn't a news show, so we don't necessarily, but like how you would, or how does he come back? How does Bill O'Reilly come back? Do they come back? Is there any coming back? Is it worse than, or
It's-
better than better?
It's
Is
even
it different than like
tonight.
a Weinstein? It's just so interesting how all this stuff's come to light.
And the thing with Matt in particular, there didn't seem to be any investigation, right? It was just sort of like,
Well, they said it was a couple of months ago that they started, right?
I guess, but this woman, then I also heard that she came in and complained on Monday at 6 p.m., did an hours-long interview with her attorney and the NBC officials, and that the announcement was made this morning on air. So either it was something really bad and they just had to do something about it, or, like you said, maybe it had actually been ongoing for a couple months.
But it's interesting how fast things
Oh my gosh. And that is something that might be worthwhile to talk about, because I think with the onslaught and advent of social media and the immediacy in which people are getting their news, it's completely changed how reactionary organizations are. Everybody wants to be first,
And
as opposed to being right.
Yeah, and there was, I don't know if you heard about it, but there was a University of Tennessee has a football opening for their football team. And
Okay.
a guy named Greg Schiano was, like, they had a letter of intent to sign him as the new coach.
Okay.
Greg had been with Rutgers, but he'd been at Penn State when, what's his name was there?
Sandusky.
Yeah. And supposedly, someone said someone else heard that Sciano saw something once and never reported it.
So he saw it, but didn't
So
do
it's
it.
Pure hearsay. I mean, he was never charged with anything, and all the various investigations, his name never came up.
Right.
So all these boosters, University of Tennessee, on Sunday all said, no, you can't have this guy. He let this thing happen, and so basically they rescinded their offer. So I mean, in today's world, people are guilty until proven innocent.
That's
which-
right. That's right.
It's the
And
kind of
that's a
time-
bummer.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And because people have these public platforms, right? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you can just say something.
Exactly.
And once it's out there, it's sort of, who cares if it's
Yeah.
true or not? It's out there.
And that's just such a shame.
I know, it's such a shame.
So anyway, yeah. So maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And for you, how you would, if you were to take on someone like a Matt Lauer as a client, like how would
Oh my gosh.
how do you, at this point, I mean, it's so new, maybe he's
Right.
not a good example, but someone else, how do you repair their
Right.
reputation? How do you get them back into some other type of business or their own business again? So
I mean, we don't have to get into this, but even the Ray Moore stuff. I'm going to be following this campaign in what state is it? Roy Moore, sorry. Roy Moore. It's like, talk about how divisive politics are. I mean, this man has been banned from going to a mall.
I know.
Can't go into a mall.
But people would rather have him
Him.
there because
Yep.
they can get their agenda.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. It's just
It's sort of like, what's even happening?
yeah, it's sad nowadays. What is going on?
This is great, though. This is my first time in these studios.
Is that right?
Yeah, this is nice.
Oh, thanks. This is-
KPK is right across the street.
Yeah.
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 This is
and,
cool.
and a much higher price. We pay for this, but it's $200 a week.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad. For
That's
an
not
hour.
bad at all.
If you go to KPK and do like a Sunday or Saturday morning show and you sell their airtime, it's like $10,000. So a month or something.
I
So this
have
is-
no idea.
yeah, because they have such a big listeners.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we're back. All right, my glasses on.
Glasses on.
Can I give out this info?
Absolutely, please do. Yeah, sure. Happy to talk to folks.
And we're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on Money 105 FM, part of the Wall Street Business Network. It's Wednesday. We just getting out of Thanksgiving week. I have a guest today, Patrick Harbison.
Hello.
Hello. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Oh my gosh, the best. I am still full.
Yeah. Did you stay local? Did you go somewhere? What'd you do?
I did a little bit of both. My folks now live in Napa, so we
Okay.
did a dinner here Thursday night, and then we drove up to Napa on Friday and did a kind of a long weekend there, which is great.
Nice. Were they affected by the big fires?
You know, luckily we were not. We got very lucky. They didn't see any structural or property damage, but certainly some friends and neighbors that did. So we got really lucky with that.
Yeah. So Patrick's got Patrick Harbison Public Relations here in town. You can his Twitter handle is at PR Weekly.
That's right.
And it's a long website. PatrickHarbisonPublicRelations.com.
That's it.
Or you can PatrickHarbison@gmail.com.
Yep.
So those are
Happy
ways
to chat
get
with
hold of
folks and always encourage communication and reaching out.
And I looked up your website, so a little bit about your bio, and then we'll go back to finish your conversation about your
Great.
background. But so it says you're a 3-time Hermes
Right.
Award. What is the Hermes?
So those are public relations awards
Okay.
that are national, and folks can submit entries in various categories, and then they're judged. So it's things like print media placement, editorial placement, crisis communications campaigns, things like that.
Okay. You've been voted Best of Sacramento in various categories by News and Review and Case Area the A-List. You're one of the top 40 under 40
That was
professionals
great.
back
That
in
was great.
2014.
Oof.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Katie, who was my co-host
Yes.
until about a month ago, she was a 40 under 40.
That's right.
So
That was actually a really substantial honor. That's regionally, that's something that the Sacramento Business Journal does annually.
Yes.
And it sort of, when I had started PHPR, was one of the first kind of career validators that I had when I was on my own. And so that was a recognition that really did mean a lot at the time.
well, and the 40 under 40, I mean, for the Business Journal, when they do that, it's people who are influencers. So that's what you got recognized as,
Right.
I think, as an influencer in town.
Which is
So-
silly, and very nice, but but yes.
That's good. That's good for you. That's great. Let's see. You were Public Relations Professional of the Year by the Sacramento Public Relations Association, and then in 2016, Influencer of the Year by the Public Relations Society of America. Very nice.
That's very nice.
And Comstocks this year named you as one of 2017's Emerging Leaders. There we go.
Which was great too, because anytime, and it's with the emerging leader class, this is an issue that Comstocks puts out annually. And it's similar to the 40 Under 40 with the
Yep.
Business Journal, is that it's really great to be in that company because, at each event I was able to meet so many other professionals from various professional backgrounds that I didn't know. And it's really inspiring when you see how many really capable, really qualified, really dedicated and passionate young professionals there are in Sacramento, and it just kind of inspires me to work even harder.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you've done well. I mean, you were CMA through about 2006-ish.
That's right. Yep. And then left there
right.
to Faculty Association of Community
And how long were
Colleges.
you there?
2.5 years.
So you left there in 08-09?
08-09. And then went to total career or subject shift, communications director position at the California Municipal Utilities Association.
Oh, nice.
So what they do is lobby on behalf of publicly owned energy and water throughout the state.
PG&E.
Well, PG&E would be investor owned. So we would.
That's you're right. You're right.
So like
SMUD.
SMUD,
Okay.
right? The SMUDs of the state, right? In fact, SMUD was, and still is that organization's second largest member, second only to Los Angeles Department of Water and Power.
Okay, yeah.
But it again, huge learning curve because you're
Okay.
talking about essentially healthcare and physician background, then college education at the public level, and then now energy and water. And all their issues were so different, and each had a different political bent and political concerns, and
Yes.
obviously needed different messaging.
Yeah.
But I was so grateful for all of those experiences because it, for me, really helped bulk up my earned media contacts, right? I developed great professional relationships with segment producers and beat reporters and, on-camera reporters throughout the state. And I really credit that experience. I mean, at that point, I was at CMUA for a long time. I was there for almost 5 years. And
Wow.
I really credit that decade plus of work with building up the relationships to a point with media that I felt comfortable going out on my own and establishing PHPR. And so I am so grateful for that all the time. And it's funny because even though I don't work there anymore, I still follow all their issues.
Right. Well, because you're invested in it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
I can see that. So when did you start PHPR?
So that was about, I think we just, it was our 5th year in 2017. I had started it sort of part-time when I was still at CMUA. My last year there, I had, begun to open it up on an extremely part-time basis with, again, just a couple of those soap opera actors and one or two that were local here to Sacramento. And once it got to a point financially where I could sustain myself full-time just doing PHPR work, I made the leap with both feet. And it's been about 5 years.
That's great. I love. I've had lots of entrepreneurs on over the years.
Oh, cool.
I always enjoy hearing that because it's neat to know someone who's stepped outside of the comfort and safety and taken a risk,
Oof.
taken many risks.
And it is scary.
Well, in the industry, as we just read, I mean, they're recognizing you, and the town is recognizing you of being what I would say is successful. So you've done well.
Well, thank you for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's, and I'm sure that you've heard similar stories from other entrepreneurs that you've spoken with. But for me, you're very confident. I was very confident in my ability to do the work. Right. I was confident in client recruitment and client retention, and I knew that I could really book the media coverage that I was guaranteeing my clients. I wasn't nervous about that. But what was a huge learning curve for me was the actual business ownership.
Yes.
How do you have employees? How do you set up a tax ID? What type of business should I be setting up for myself? Am I a sole proprietorship? And those sorts of nuances that you really take for granted, or at least I did when I worked in-house, because they weren't things, frankly, that I'd ever had to have thought about before.
And that's why it's important, I think, to have a team with a good CPA, a good attorney,
Absolutely.
a good banker.
Oh my gosh, I just send the most lavish Christmas gifts every year to my tax person because she has truly been a godsend. I mean, what she has taught me in the past, 4 to 5 years alone has been worth her weight in gold. That's absolutely true. But you're right. I mean, you really have to surround yourself with talented people that you trust. And again, that is what I have found to be so great about starting a business in Sacramento, is that the business community at large is really supportive. And I was able to lean on friends and colleagues that had done similar transitions prior to mine that could give me some really good recommendations.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's what I've seen too. Is Sacramento's very supportive and very. It's a good environment
Absolutely.
to build and grow a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you started 5 years ago. You've
Yep.
grown. You're getting recognition. what type of stuff are you working on today?
So we, it's interesting because we do obviously have our statewide client bases. We've got 2 national clients. We really prioritize those, but we've really taken the hyper-local approach within the past 2 years of PHPR, and how that's manifested has been really exciting. So some of the bigger things that we've worked on the past couple of years are the Wide Open Walls Mural Festival, which is now the largest mural festival in the entire country. We had 22 murals this past year and 18 the year before.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So what we do is we're trying to sort of beautify the city through local art, and we have such a wealth of local artistic talent here in Sacramento, and we partnered with local businesses to, sometimes donate, sometimes pay for the use of their wall, and we've kind of curated these amazing murals all throughout the city that highlights our local talent, and it garnered national and international attention. I mean, CNN, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, huge publications were focusing on Sacramento's art scene in particular in ways that they really haven't before. So that was really, really an exciting project.
And so how many years has that gone on now?
This was its second year.
Okay.
2017 was its second year.
Time of year, it's like a
So
short
it's
period, or-
it's usually August.
Okay.
This year we did it August 10th to the 20th, and it's looking likely that will be the 10-day span of the festival for 2018 as well. But again, it grew so much this year from the previous year that we're hoping to see similar growth moving into 2018.
And so that's an exposure of local talent.
Right.
Is that also a fundraiser of any sort?
Yeah, we partnered this year with TLCS as our nonprofit benefactor. I'm sure next year we'll have one as well. That just hasn't been decided yet, but it's certainly a big priority of the festival's founder, David Sobon, to do that.
What's TLC?
So TLCS works here locally with sort of mentally challenged youth, and it tries to help them. It provides them with services and job placement and all sorts of things. But it's a really, really wonderful local organization. And David Sobon is so philanthropic. And
Oh yes, he is. Yeah.
years in the
He's all
past,
over the
he's
place, so.
with his art
Yeah.
and his
Yeah.
philanthropy given to Weave and to the Children's Home and to various organizations. So I know that certainly in 2018 that'll be a big priority for him as well.
Okay. So Wide Open Walls.
Wide Open Walls was a huge one. We're opening, just actually next month, we're opening the first Punch Bowl Social, which is going to be in Doco, the downtown commons, just across the street from the.
And I saw a little bit
the arena.
on Twitter about Punch Bowl. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about that too. We've got about 45 seconds.
Okay.
We'll go to commercial, so we'll start the conversation now, and then we'll.
Sure.
pick it up
What's
after
great
the
about
break.
Punch Bowl Social is that they are a national chain that started in Denver, Colorado. And they're sort of adult gaming at its finest. Think foosball and cornhole and bowling and virtual reality gaming, but also amazing food. So it's going to be 2 stories, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Where's that going to be?
It's going to be right across from the main entrance of the Golden One Center.
awesome. Okay.
At the Doco Shopping
Okay.
Plaza.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll continue the conversation with Patrick Harbison of
Great.
Patrick Harbison Public Relations. So you listen to Beyond the Numbers. So what's different between that and David?
So it's more upscale.
Okay.
It's more upscale and less like arcade games.
Yeah, yeah.
And more, it's they've got like 6 bowling alleys in this
Oh,
restaurant.
okay.
They've got so it's like the foos, it's kind of like the old school games.
Yeah, yeah.
But then they also have karaoke booths.
Oh, fun.
And they do virtual reality gaming, which I don't know if you've done that yet, but you put on these. Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
It is. It's really crazy because you sort of feel like you are in the game.
Right.
I've seen it before used for. We helped launch the Mill on Broadway, which is that huge, residential
Right.
development, and they were using virtual reality to tour prospective home buyers on the various home lots. And so you don't even have to have the constructed house model. You can just throw these goggles into it. It's crazy. But it's interesting because you could be sort of on the second, story of this tour and kind of walk out in midair over the first floor.
That's cool.
It plays a weird trick on your mind because
Oh, I'm
you're like,
sure.
I'm gonna fall.
Yeah.
That's not real.
Yeah.
So it can sort of be off-putting, but it's really interesting. But that's a fun project, and what we're trying to do is take this prioritization of Sacramento and leverage our statewide and national contacts to draw corporate attention to Sacramento, right? So as much as we can.
And we're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on my 105.5 FM. We were just talking about some of the goals that Patrick has, and so maybe touch on that for our radio listeners who didn't hear that. But
Sure.
I think that's an important.
Well, I think that one of the things that our firm can uniquely help contribute to is sort of the growing corporate client or corporate culture of Sacramento. And so what we like to do is leverage our statewide and even in some cases national contacts to promote big businesses, to promote new businesses coming to Sacramento, maybe for the first time. And also helping kind of brand Sacramento as, this 2.0 version of itself. I mean, I don't think has ever been a better time to be in Sacramento when you look at not just our farm to fork culture, but all of the exciting developments that are happening throughout the city. I think that, companies would be foolish not to look to our city as a great place to expand or grow their own companies. And so, as much as PHPR can help facilitate that, we're happy to do so.
Good. So what's it called? Punch Bowl?
Punch Bowl Social. It's going to be your new favorite spot to hang out.
And when is that opening?
So December 15th will be our grand opening. It's open to the public that night. Yep, exactly. And we're hitting the ground running.
And so I was asking about, is it like Dave & Buster's? You said, think Dave & Buster's a bit more upscale.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think that what Punch Bowl Social is doing with its culinary program is much more advanced, and to the gaming is different. I mean, I was mentioning to you during the break that we've got bowling lanes inside the restaurant, and foosball and cornhole and all sorts of fun stuff, that would be great for birthday parties or weddings or work events, whatever.
Karaoke.
Oh my gosh, private karaoke booth, so you know where you'll find me.
Are you a karaoke?
You know what I am.
Person?
I'm a big karaoke person.
Big karaoke, or I don't know if you
I do.
Okay, so Wide Open Walls, and then Punch Bowl.
Yeah, Punch Bowl Social. Dry Bar was also a corporate client that we worked with very closely this year, and it was their first location here in Sacramento. So, similarly to Punch Bowl, it's exciting when you see these big chains that have had huge success in other markets really start to prioritize Sacramento as a new market for them to enter into.
Yep.
So as often as we can work with clients like that, we really love that. And then a lot of the stuff that we like to do too is promote the great work that a ton of our nonprofits do. Our firm in particular works really closely with WEAVE, Women Escaping the Violent Environment. I think that the work that Beth Hassett and Julie and their whole team over there does for Sacramento is completely vital, and they deserve all the kudos in the world. But it's a lot of fun.
We Make-A-Wish.
Make-A-Wish Foundation is a big one for us.
We had them on about a month ago.
Oh, great.
One of the Wish kids.
Oh.
And, I forget the executive directors.
Probably Jennifer Stone. Yeah. They're fantastic.
Yeah, it was great having them on.
And again, the work that they do, we worked with them on, Ethan wanted to be a garbage man for the day. This was last year. It was sort of our version of Bat Kid.
I remember that, yeah.
Here in Sacramento. It was just amazing to see the affection that the whole city had. I mean, the city came out en masse to support Ethan at his various stops. So when you see things like that, you can't help but fall in love with this city even more.
Sure,
even more.
So we Make-A-Wish.
We Make-A-Wish. I personally, in my personal time, really prioritize giving back. I just joined the Sacramento Theater Company board. The work that they're doing is really exciting, and they're putting on brand new original plays throughout the year. So I encourage people to go support our local theater scene. But opening restaurants has been a joy and a pleasure of ours. We work really closely with places like the 1010 Room and the Jungle Bird that have all opened in Midtown this past year. So it's just exciting, to be a part of the ongoing development and booming kind of cultural scene that we're seeing right now, and not just downtown and Midtown. I think throughout Sacramento at large.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a lot going on in Sacramento. It's very
Tons.
exciting times. Yeah. So one of the things I always like to ask entrepreneurs is maybe a lesson that you've learned from. So I don't really like to call typically, at least for me, things that you go through as failures, but maybe something, a challenging business situation that you went through where you learned from it and were able to grow. So failure, if you want to call it that, or
I think
experience, something like that.
I think for me, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly when they're first starting out, it's hard to say no. And what I did at the onset of starting PHPR is I said yes to a lot of things, and probably too many things. Things that overstretched my work capability. Things that I probably wasn't the best fit for, just professionally. My earned media connections and the client's direct needs maybe weren't the best fit. But because I had a hard time saying no to people, I just didn't want to let anybody down. Yeah. And also there was that concern about backfilling the salary that I had just given up.
Oh, yeah.
I said yes to a lot of things, and that sort of, I guess for lack of a better term you would say, ability to not say no I think I carried on a little bit longer than I should have, and at times it was to my professional detriment. So I would recommend people be really mindful of the skill sets that they can directly provide to their client in whatever industry that is, and not be afraid to say no when they can.
Yeah, yeah. It's a challenge though when you're trying to build your business.
No, it's such a challenge.
Take on a client that you may otherwise, that maybe 5 years down later you wouldn't take on.
Exactly.
But then you.
Well, you know, I think one of the priorities, at least for me, when I started PHPR, was working with clients that I really believed in and really wanted to work with, and were kind of in line with my vision for Sacramento and what that means. And so, you know, when you find yourself kind of working with clients that necessarily at the beginning didn't fit that mold, it was challenging. It was absolutely challenging, and it was a lesson learned. It certainly was. But I don't know. Gosh, I learn new stuff every day, and I make mistakes every day. I think everybody does. But that's part of the process too. Right?
Absolutely.
That's part of growing and learning and developing your craft.
Yeah, and I think the key is to learn from the mistakes. So
Absolutely.
The more we can continue to. Do you use a business advisor or a coach, and you kind of form a relationship with
I
that,
certainly have in the past. I really have in the past, and I lean a lot on our local professional organizations. You mentioned a couple earlier. Public Relations Society of America has a Sacramento chapter, and then obviously the Sacramento Public Relations Association, which is just here. They've been invaluable because they have a wealth of knowledge from PR professionals that have been doing this far longer than I have. And so I would recommend any industry professional to identify their like-minded associations at the local or even statewide level, because those have been huge resources to me too. Not just for industry knowledge, but they've been really helpful in recommending, again, tax people and contractors and potential staff when I've been in places of hiring. So that has certainly been invaluable to me, and I would recommend anybody leaning on kind of their version of that.
Okay. Well, we've got a couple minutes left. So one of the things we talked about is what's going on in the news lately. And,
Right.
and
Gosh, so much.
So much, right? and you have people, especially people in the news and public figures, if you will, and you work with some.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the cases, Matt Lauer got fired today, Bill O'Reilly got fired recently, Greg Schiano didn't get his job at Tennessee over the weekend.
Right.
And
Every day, so
yeah.
something new.
And so as a publicist, I mean, if someone who's gone through this comes to you and says, what do they say? I need to repair my reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I suppose each case may be different, but.
And it ends up being that, I mean, it's classic crisis communications. That's what we call it in the industry.
Right.
And you're right in that it is situationally based, right? Person to person, it can depend. You know, just to be timely with something like a Matt Lauer, I mean, you look at an organization like NBC, if I were doing their PR, I think that they handled it pretty well. I mean, they had to get out in front of this.
Yes.
And they made a very quick decision, and they stood behind it.
Yeah.
They just got out in front of it. For somebody like Matt Lauer, obviously, he's dealing with something completely different, right? He's dealing with the fallout and the ramifications.
Yeah.
I would recommend he do the same thing as well. I think that he should tell his side of the story as soon as possible and try to get ahead of some of that messaging. I think what you saw with a situation like Kevin Spacey pretty recently was a terrible example of how to do that. Because he was conflating two completely different things, right? So he was being accused of something and then tried to smokescreen it with sort of a vague coming out story. And so he sort of upset both groups, and it ended up completely backfiring. So,
and Louis C.K., who was not too long after that, I mean, he actually came out the next day with a long apology, and yet some people said that wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough.
Heartfelt, or was it a real apology? It was.
It's one of those sort of situations where you can't win for trying.
Yeah.
But there are sort of best practices and better ways to go about doing it. I think that as long as you're as transparent as possible, as early as possible, it can only serve you good.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking with Patrick Harbison of Patrick Harbison Public Relations here this morning. Patrick, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
It's great.
The Twitter handle is @PRWeekly. The website is patrickharbisonpublicrelations.com, and you can email him at patrickharbison@gmail.com or tweet.
That's right.
Tweet or something.
That's right.
One way to get a hold of him.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can find me everywhere.
You're all over it. So if you've got public relations issues, needs, questions, Patrick's your guy. So
Please,
you can call 906-747-9143.
One of the other things I would love to say really quickly is that I speak to a lot of local schools, Sac State, Sac City, UC Davis. So if there are current PR students or recent graduates that have any questions about starting their career, feel free to contact me too. I'm happy to chat with them also.
Okay, good. So if that is your vocation, you're moving down that path, give Patrick a call or get a hold of him through his website. I'd be more than happy to talk with you and mentor you through that. I mentor a number of accounting students and have for years, and I really enjoy it.
Isn't that great?
It's great, yeah.
That's nice to hear.
All right, next week we'll have Eric Levy, who's the CEO of Luxor One, Drop Locker, and Laundry Locker, and a San Francisco business that's moving to Sacramento, so we'll be talking about why he's doing that and what he does. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
That's so easy.
Yeah.
That was great.
I'm flies too.
Oh my gosh, so sorry I was late. We were at KCRA this morning.
Is that right?
Promoting Rent, and we were supposed to be on it during the 6 a.m. hour, and they kept bumping us back.
Yeah, because NBC's got a little
Because
something
they're the
going on.
NBC affiliate.
Exactly.
And, my poor client who had to be, they were stressed